Noelplum. This is Yusuf. I have three last names actually. One of them being Reyes, the other being Altahir. But I'm gonna respond to two videos as well as I have those videos about the issue of gun control and the issue of unarmed citizenry. But I feel like you are not a Beelzebub, and you know that there can actually be some response, and I actually do agree with you on a lot of these things. I only found in your video that this one I'm responding to, you said there was 5. Maybe it's just me. I counted 3. This particular one is the worst argument, apologetics argument in the world. My experience is you've dealt with basically the Protestant, or mainly the evangelical or fundamentalist or Pentecostal Protestantism that's come out of America in the last 100 years and kind of infected the world. Not necessarily the ancient or historic or traditional branches of Christianity, which is fine. The crazies are usually the loudest. But there may be better ways to go after these people using a jujitsu type of move. Now, the idea of, you mentioned, justifying, showing, God's good, if a horrible act happens, that's terrible, but, the child being saved from the rubble is a miracle. That it's not justified to look at a good act to prove God's benevolence. I agree, actually. There's multiple times within the New Testament, both in the Gospels and in the Epistles, where there's actually a few incidences. There's one where a tower collapses and 7 men die, and Christ actually asked the Jews at the time, what did those men do to die? Was God angry with them? You actually have in the book of Job, at the end of the book of Job, God comes out of the darkness and everything, and he comes before Job's friends and himself, who all claim Job must have sinned, and gives them no answer. Says, you don't know why bad things happen. And we have no way, when we're dealing with a being that stands apart from space, energy, time, and matter, good and evil, our definitions of good and evil don't apply. So yeah, it's silly. But in the at least within the New Testament, or the Christian scriptures, I should say, the physical world belongs to the devil. The Christian Gnostics would call this the demiurge. They would actually attribute that God to creating the world, the God Yahweh, to creating the world, and that's the evil God. That's the chief archon. The second, heaven may be torture. Yes. In Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy, ancient forms of Christianity, pre-1000, AD 1000, and even in the New Testament, God is described as fire, as love and light. Being in the presence of God is either refining away the dross, as in fire, or being burned up like chaff, so everybody goes back to God. And it will be hell for some people and agony for others. It terrifies me, the idea of being in the presence of God. It's horrifying. There's even an expression in Eastern Christianity as well as Islam, the terror of the day of resurrections. There's nothing more horrible than that, of being in front of God. Even in our liturgy, God is terrible and awful. There's no buddy Christ. That's why we're dumbfounded at God, I love you and want to be with you. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No. Just like if you look at angels, whenever they appear, they're killing everybody and destroying cities and stuff. And the fourth one, literal or inspired. These are two different things. Literal, no Christians ever believed that until about 150 years ago. Inspired, yeah. I mean, Martin Luther King was inspired by Christianity. All the suicide bombers were inspired. The Islamic suicide bombers were inspired by Islam and the Quran. Timothy McVeigh was inspired by white supremacism and the Turner Diaries. The Bible was written, obviously, all the books of the Bible were inspired by God, their belief in God, but they were written by different authors, as you can see. I have many videos across my channels on documentary hypothesis about the different writers. This is pretty much known in scholarship. That's why you have one creation story which calls the deity God, or El, or Elohim, and you have one full creation story where man and woman are created equal. And then you have the second one where there's this deity Yahweh, who's not all-knowing, who's jealous and angry, and he creates man and woman out of a rib. So divine inspiration, and the Americans, or the Anglophones, I guess, the stupid evangelicals took inspiration in the Bible being literal, or a dictation from God, like the Quran is supposed to be. I'm going to apostate from Islam, so it's kind of easier for me. And Christianity is a good decompression from Islam, as Ayan Hirsi Ali could tell you. Yeah, some of the stories were spliced together. That's why we have two stories of the flood. You get each one of these is a different writer, each color. Three main writers, J, E, and P, and then there's D, the Deuteronomist, and then there's the redactor. So inspired is what's called and people, was the Bible inspired by God? Yeah. Well, then Satan is the Quran was inspired by God. The Bhagavad Gita was inspired by the gods. Every hymn was inspired by God. Dictation, no. All right. Easy way to dispatch these idiots. The best way, when they argue about oh yeah, the Word of God, the Bible being the Word of God. It's actually logos. The Bible itself, the New Testament at least, if they're Christians, logos is more akin to Tao. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That, what we translate word as logos, which is closer to the concept of Tao. I have a whole video on what logos means. Christ is the incarnation of the logos, this pre-existent, all-encompassing force of the universe. The Bible. the Western canon of what gets called the Bible was not until, we don't see it until Athanasius of Alexandria's 39th Paschal letter in AD 367. And I'll end it here because this was a much longer video than I wanted to be. Very sorry for that.